that confirmed?
Ross, can you confirm that the live stream is on, please?
Sorry, Chair, the live stream is on now. I've checked.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Thursday, 1st of October 2020. This is a virtual meeting that is being live streamed. Firstly, I'd like to ask for any apologies for absence.
I've received apologies from Councillor Lang and Paul Rickard.
Councillor Campbell, Chair.
Councillor Campbell, thank you. As this committee has taken a number of changes and we do have some new members, what I intend to do, normally if we were sitting in a normal meeting room, we'd go around the table and do introductions. Obviously that's not possible in a virtual setting, so I'm going to go down a list of attendees here, and as I read your names out, if you could just say a little bit about who you are and if you have a position, particular position, and just explain about that. So I'll start off with myself, Mark Swinburne, Councillor for Cramlington Village Ward and Chair of the committee. So we'll move to Ken Stowe.
I'm Ken Stowe. I'm the County Councillor for Prudden North and I'm Vice Chair of this committee.
Thank you, Ken, and congratulations on your position for Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Deirdre Campbell, we have apologies for. Trevor Sesford, has he joined yet? No. Wayne Daly.
Hello there. Just checking my microphone is on, which it is. Wayne Daly, County Councillor for Cramlington North and a regular attendee on this committee for the past 3 and a bit years.
Thank you, Wayne. Welcome to the committee, and I'm sure your experience will prove valuable to this committee. Scott Dickinson.
Councillor Scott Dickinson, representative for George Bay, Deputy Leader of the Labour Group and Shadow Cabinet Member for Children's Services.
Thank you, Scott. Liz Dunn.
Hi, Councillor Liz Dunn, representing Linemouth Ward.
Thank you, Liz. We have apologies from James Lang. Roderick Laurie, has he joined yet? No, not yet. No. Russ Wallace.
Russ Wallace, County Councillor Bedford Central, retired secondary head teacher.
Thank you, Russ. Alan Hodgson.
Yep, Alan Hodgson, cooperative member, representing the Catholic Diocese of Hexham and Newcastle.
Thank you, Alan. David Lennox, has he been able to join yet? I know David Lennox has some connection issues, so we're trying to sort that out at the moment. John Sanderson.
Good morning, cooperative member, teacher representative on behalf of the National Education Union. I'm also currently fully employed as a teacher.
Thank you, John. Lynn Horton.
Hi, Lynn Houghton, cooperative member representing the NASUWT and full-time teaching member of staff.
Welcome to the committee, Lynn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guy Renner-Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Gary Thompson. I represent the Bamburgh Ward, and I'm the portfolio holder for Children's Services. And I'll take this opportunity, I said it last meeting, but he wasn't here, to thank Councillor Wayne Daly for everything he did when he was portfolio holder for Children's Services.
Thank you, Guy. Chris Angus.
Thanks, Chair. I'm Chris Angus. I'm the Scrutiny Officer for the Family and Children's Services Committee.
Thank you, Chris. And Kath McAvoy-Carr.
Hi, Kath McAvoy-Carr. I'm the Exec Director of Adult and Children's Services for the County Council.
Thank you. Audrey Kingham.
Morning everyone, Audrey Kingham, Interim Director of Education and Skills.
Thank you. Leslie Little.
Good morning, Senior Democratic Services Officer at Northumberland County Council.
Thank you, Leslie. Liz Morgan. You're on mute, Liz.
Good morning again. I'm still Director of Public Health. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. David Street.
Good morning, everybody. I'm David Street, Deputy Director of Education on an interim basis.
Thank you, David. Is there anybody who's joined this morning that I've missed?
Yeah, if I can, Chair, if you don't mind. Gordon Stewart, County Councillor for Prudhoe South, also Deputy Chair of Northumberland County Council. I say Mr. Lennox is listening into this, but we are still having some technical problems. I've spoken to Councillor Sesford, who's having trouble getting onto the link as well. I'll try and get him joined as soon as possible.
Well, would you like me to send the link to him as well? I've sent it to Mr. Lennox.
Yes, please. Leslie.
Yeah, you don't mind, please, Leslie. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Just for information and those new members, in our work programme, there is a terms of reference listing all about this committee. So if you haven't read it already, please take a moment or two to read through that information. I'll move to item 2, which is disclosure of members' interest. Does anyone have anything to disclose?
Yeah, Chair. Just to say, I meant to say last week as well, I'm treasurer of Corbridge Tennis Club, and we received a business grant from Northumberland County Council over the summer holidays. So I don't know whether I need to notify you on that.
It's always better just to mention it rather than something crops up in the future, but thank you for that.
Right.
There's no minutes to go through from the previous meeting because it's such a short time period that's gone between the last meeting, so those will come up at the following meeting. The forward plan of key decisions. So anything to bring up on there, Chris?
Thanks, Chair. No, the forward plan at the moment is just for information. It's a list of the key decisions coming to Cabinet over the next few months, but there's nothing on there coming via fax.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 4, report for consideration. And it's a report of the Director of Public Health, and I'll move to Liz for that, please.
Thank you. So I'll just sort of briefly run over what COVID infection is looking like in Northumberland at the moment. So in the 7 days up to Monday, we had 381 cases. In the week before that, we had 328 cases. And in the fortnight before that, so the first 2 weeks of September, we had 188 cases. We have got the second highest testing rate in the Northeast. So we're testing about 7,000 people a week. We've got the 4th highest case rate. So our case rates at the moment are running at about 118 for every 100,000 people. And that's the 4th highest in the Northeast, so only exceeded by Newcastle, Gateshead and Sunderland. But you can compare our 118 to Newcastle's 205 per 100,000. We're not quite at Newcastle's stage yet. But in terms of the positivity rate, which is the proportion of tests which come back positive, we've only got the 9th highest rate, so at 6.7%, and that's about half the rate that Newcastle are seeing at the moment. So what does all that tell us? It tells us that there is a glimmer of light on the horizon, in that there is a suspicion that the rate of increase is slowing. it also tells us that some of the high case rates that we're looking at are a reflection of the high number of tests that we're doing. So the more you test people, obviously, the more cases you find. But also the fact that the positivity rate, so the proportion of tests that test positive, the fact that that is continuing to increase does suggest that there is still increasing transmission across the county. In terms of geographical spread, it's still very much concentrated in the southeast, but we are continuing to see cases going up the coast and along the A69 corridor, and odd cases coming up in our most rural communities. From a young person's perspective, the proportion of cases that are from young people has remained fairly constant since the beginning of September. So it's between 8 and 13% of the total number of cases over that period. And from a school's perspective, the average number of suspected cases that we're seeing in schools since the beginning of September has stayed fairly constant over that period. They're mostly single cases, mostly largely in the southeast, but a handful or the odd case in schools out to the west. In terms of support to schools, David Street, who's on the meeting, chairs a dedicated wraparound support team, which is there specifically to support schools around COVID suspected and positive cases. As I think I might have mentioned last time, we are, because the public health system is creaking a little bit, a lot of the work that was being done by Public Health England around supporting schools has been shifted into local authorities. So all of those queries that were going from schools to Public Health England, we're now picking up, and we put a system in place so that schools can email us using a form, and we can then pick up all suspected and positive cases and provide rapid and timely and appropriate advice to schools around identifying close contacts, providing them with advice on self-isolation and some standard letters that they can use for close contacts and individuals who aren't close contacts, so that everybody is getting consistent and accurate information. And that support team includes individuals from education, from the public health team, and from school nursing. We've also got regular meetings with head teachers to talk about COVID related issues. We've generated and updated a frequently asked questions document, which attempts to, well, it does summarise all of the guidance around coronavirus in schools, and a flow chart to ensure that we are providing consistent support and that we've got robust processes in place. And we do provide 7-day-a-week support for schools. So that's a sort of brief summary of where we are in terms of coronavirus generally, and in schools and young people in particular. But I'm sure that Kath and or David will want to add to that.
Kath, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, but yes, obviously. Just to say that this is obviously a very stressful and very worrying time for our schools and for parents around the county, and we are trying our best to manage the messages in a way that means that schools are getting effective and swift information and support as and when. And ensure that they have access to a range of tools or a range of information that helps to make those decisions as quickly or to offer that advice as quickly and as swiftly as possible.
Thank you. David, do you have any further comments?
Just to say that really what we're finding in school is that the schools are a reflection of their local community in terms of the COVID cases. So where we're seeing that more broadly in the community there are more cases, it's not a surprise that therefore in the schools that those children go to, there's maybe a slightly higher propensity for there to be a positive COVID case. One thing that we're not seeing is that, there's a positive case in a year 3 classroom somewhere, and the next day 15 of the children in that classroom go on to have COVID symptoms and test positive for COVID. We're not seeing transmission in schools, in classrooms. There is the odd case, I don't know if I've mentioned before, but some sixth formers that shared a car, to go to school ended up all with positive COVID cases. But we're not finding that transmission, as I say, in classrooms itself is widespread at all. I think that's testament to the systems that the schools, teachers and support staff are putting in place every day in school to minimise transmission. But obviously, as soon as there is a positive case, there's a system to follow, which the schools are well aware of, and that should be minimising any additional problems.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions, comments?
Could I? Oh, sorry.
I'll go to Wayne first and then back to John.
Thank you, Chair. It was remiss of me at the beginning not to congratulate yourself and Ken on your elevated positions.
Thank
and
you.
obviously, Guy's looking well healthy there on his new role, so he's obviously loving it.
I look forward to any of the challenges that this position may bring.
Yeah. Well, anyway, right. So just a couple of things, if you don't mind, Chair, just on the report. Thank you very much, Liz. Very helpful as ever. And it's also fortunate that we've got a couple of trade union reps on here as well, because the message needs to go out about the huge debt of thanks that we owe to all of our schools up and down the county, who have been working tirelessly since schools were mandated to close on the 23rd of March, and then they've gradually been brought back safely and in a very clear manner to support education of children. So I think it's and I'm sure the rest of the committee would agree that we should put on record all thanks to the teaching staff and to those people, and also particularly our staff at County Council, who, if nothing else, proves the fact that local authorities, when they get things right, actually work really, really well. And I think we should put on record the massive support which has come from the centre in Northumberland to our schools, and I'm sure the schools would recognise that. So just get those thank yous out of the way. Just on terms of the COVID element, I think and it's quite right that Liz focuses on the kind of the public health element of this, and I'm very confident, supremely confident, that in terms of Liz and her team and everyone, that they're on the ball with that, and we will absolutely do what is necessary. What I want to do is extend it slightly and talk about the educational impact of COVID, because we had many of our children who were out of education, in some cases supported by their parents, the carers, doing online learning, but it's not the same as being in a class. So one of the things I think, as a committee, we need to focus on is that COVID recovery in terms of education. And I've been very keen to, when I was on North of Tyne, to look at the education challenge being repurposed to include a huge element of a recovery premium around the education challenge. So what I'm really keen to sort of find out, we've got officers on here, is, and I know that they're doing huge amount of work with schools and centrally, is about how we can support our schools and our children to do some form of recovery through either a centrally generated premium, which we ask government for, or indeed putting in a very robust COVID recovery plan. And if I can, I would like to come back on a second point, but if I could just ask where we are in terms of that educational recovery, Chair.
Yeah, fine.
Mark, do you want me to start that?
Yes, please, Kath.
So Wayne, you're quite right. There are some issues and some challenges, and I've just this morning been having a conversation about the challenges for some of our schools this year, because what we know from what we've seen so far is that this year is likely to be a significantly disrupted year for education for children. And what we do need to do is to think about what the impact of that will be for our the outcomes for our children next June, July time, and encourage and support local and national lobbying around what that might look like, so that we don't end up in a situation where in the summer holidays the exam results are questioned, or whether or not we have exams or not are questioned or queried. So we've got something in place that would help support our schools in that way. Currently, our schools are managing on a day-to-day basis, delivering education and welfare issues as and when they need to, which is again almost on a daily basis. But we are working with schools, or we're starting to look at what we can do to support schools going forward in relation to that recovery bit. And the Education Strategy Board, the Education Improvement Board that we talked long and hard about during your tenure, is about to be launched formally. So, David, that will come into some of the work that David Street does with that education board. In relation to the education challenge, that hasn't gone away, as I hope you know, and we are currently looking at what that needs to look like going forward, because things have changed and have changed quite significantly since the education challenge was written. There is a new suggestion or a new report that's been written that probably needs some further work in relation to recovery, but we will that is included in there in order to be able to keep those drums banging around those issues.
Great. And on that point around the Education Improvement Board, which obviously was in my priorities as a cabinet member, that I think is a really critical part of how we can deal with this COVID recovery. The second point, and I'm glad to hear all of those things. The second point, Chair, I just wanted to raise was that you're probably aware that last week IPPR released a report which was called Child Poverty and Devolution. I mean, fantastic bedtime reading, but actually it's really important, because what it talks about is how we can use things like devolution, the creation of North of Tyne, to actually do things differently and better. And I have been in consultation with Bishop Christine, who chairs the Inclusive Growth Board at North of Tyne, around setting up a children's commission. Now, I'm not a fan of setting up committees, I'll be honest with you, but I do think there is something about a very, very focused commission which carries lots of political weight, carries public sector, other parties coming together, making a very clear appeal to government to actually bring additional funding into our region, because this hasn't just happened because of COVID, and this just hasn't happened over the last 10 years. 4 generations, our educational outcomes have been significantly lower than other parts of the country. And I think actually a children's commission with teeth, which requests funding, which requests devolution of powers, so that we can control our education system in the area, I think would be a fantastic opportunity for certainly the County Council and this committee to get behind. But that is an ongoing discussion with Bishop Christine. I will be meeting her next week. I know that she's keen to develop it. Certainly in Manchester, which is where I am today, they have actually got a Greater Manchester Strategy 2020, which I would highly recommend that people look at, because it links public sector, private sector, public health. It links everyone together for a very, very clear directive on how they can support children through particularly COVID recovery. So it was just really just saying, I know that everyone is on the same page here, but I do think in terms of a committee, I hope that you would get behind what Kath has been doing, Kath McAvoy has been doing on the Education Challenge. Audrey Kingham, I know, will be working on it in David Street, but I think we absolutely have got to make an appeal to central government that, you know, we've had generational issues in this area. They've been exacerbated because of COVID. We have an opportunity now to do things differently, and with a recovery premium and powers, we can transform young people's lives. So I just hope that the committee would support that. Thank you, Chair.
Just to come back on that, Wayne, I've actually got a copy of the IPPR report here. I think it would make an excellent subject of a task and finish group, but unfortunately we're only allowed 2 per session, and we have done 2. So I know May is some time off yet, but possibly taking that forward. Guy, did you want to come back on that point?
Yeah, of course. I think Councillor Daly's right in everything he says. Obviously, staff, which have been doing a fantastic job, have really been focusing on the day job and the day-to-day problems that are coming at us with coronavirus, and that's the focus of all of us. But as we move on and hopefully things settle down a bit, these are certainly things that we want to take forward. And I'm going to borrow his old phrase. My door's always open. If he wants to let me know the ideas and the issues that he has and bring that to me, then crack on. But like I say, the day-to-day focus of the staff at the moment is focusing on the current outbreak. But as we move on past that, I think he's raised some excellent points.
Okay, thank you, Guy. John Sanderson.
Morning. If I could just add something to what Kath was saying, and certainly what Wayne was saying. I was talking to Jill, who's the head teacher at Collingwood this morning. She was very complimentary about the support that she's received from the local authority, which is great. They've taken a particularly interesting approach. They've got a parallel leadership structure. And I was saying to Jill, has this been copied elsewhere? She's not aware that it has. So they've got a senior leader to look after particular COVID issues, whilst the rest of the leadership get on with the normal running of the school, which seems to be working particularly well. They also do something called the Collingwood Connect Outreach. Now, if we're looking at a recovery plan, that would be a really good model for contacting particularly vulnerable students that we're discussing. So it might be worth talking to Jill and just seeing if that could be replicated elsewhere. I don't see any reason why it couldn't. So I think all of the things that Wayne was mentioning, and if I could just say, I was talking to a good friend of all you guys last night called Ian Lavery, and that's the educational deficit that we've suffered for generational. That's something that I was talking to him about. So I think there's a general consensus that we need to really look into it. So I think that's brilliant, Wayne.
Thank you, John. Any other questions? My apologies, I didn't recognise Travis Sesford or Reverend Lennox when they came in earlier on when they finally got connected. So welcome to the committee there. Do we have any more points or questions to raise, please? I just wanted to say something that with regards to schools, it is an extremely stressful situation. It's never an easy thing involving with schools and education anyway. The current COVID situation has hugely exacerbated that, problem. It's very stressful, very difficult for schools, for children and for parents. When there is an outbreak, the schools are managing it exceptionally well. And it's already been mentioned that if there is a positive case, then the school deals with it and they ask that everything is dealt with by the school on an individual basis. What doesn't help is massive media and social media reports, because that generates huge demand on the school. So, for example, if a year 3 child is found to have a positive result, the school deals with that. But huge press reports on it then generate more demand into the school from parents of all of the other years asking, is my child affected? They've been in the playground, they've been in the school, etc., etc. It really doesn't help on a hugely stressful situation and how busy the schools are anyway. The school deals with these cases, the Education Authority, the whole department, etc. And so it's a bit of an ask to say, basically, can we just calm this down and let those who need to deal with it as they know how to. Guy, did you want to come in there, please?
Thank you, Mark. I think that's very admirable what you've just said, and I agree. We're never going to stop journalists being journalists. It is what it is. But what we have done is really ramp up our comms, so it's our message that's getting out there before the before the Chronicle or whoever else gets hold of it. I don't know if any members want to comment on that, Audrey, because we've worked quite hard on that.
Yes, Chair and Councillor Thompson, just to mention to everyone on the committee that I couldn't agree more. Head teachers are dealing with this on a minute-by-minute basis. Everyone has said this morning how much the team are stepping up and really doing even more 7 days a week to ensure that we're at the end of the phone to support head teachers, staff, governors as well. This is a leadership issue from a governance perspective. We recognised quite early that a number of restrictions and guidance and the understanding around that guidance has been quite a challenge. We know that from a community, but also obviously from an operational day-to-day perspective and how that links with parental and grandparent engagement. So our comms team are now meeting with the head teachers weekly alongside us, and we are trying to provide consistent information to head teachers so that they are not really engulfed by the media requirements, and there are a lot. Social media, they're trying to manage that. We're trying to put as much in as we possibly can to give the bite-sized information, to give key statistics, and to actually give some comparable statistics. So, for example, I think David mentioned earlier that our in-school transmission rate is very, very small in comparison. It is community transmission rate that's much greater. But actually, that message becomes really fearful when someone doesn't understand that percentage or that data. So we're really trying to give some very straightforward messages that are consistent across the county for all of our leaders in schools, all of our school members, and actually working with our TU members as well to ensure that we've got communication with them as well.
Thank you, Audrey. Do you have any more questions or comments on this item? Guy?
I was just going to go back to John mentioned Collingwood School. I've actually got a visit there coming up in the next few days or weeks. It's befuddled. So we'll certainly raise that with the head teacher. A point I was going to make: elected members are quite lucky in this regard. They on the 23rd they got a briefing from the chief executive with about 30 points on which outlined everything that's going on in the schools. From those points, what hasn't been clicked on today is how we're focusing on the mental health of both children and teachers, because this is a very stressful time for both. And I think one of my own priorities is to make sure that they are looked after in the best way that they can. Yeah. So we have an inclusive education service for children that possibly have been identified suffering mental health issues, and this wraparound with the head teachers that has been mentioned, that includes regular calls and drop-ins and meetings and so on. We're doing everything we can to support them in that regard. And we have asked, and the leader is in discussions with other leaders of the LA7 to use that as a forum to ask the government for more funding. But as Councillor Daly pointed out, that's mainly around the problems that we have here and now, and I think we need to open up another stream with regards to what we're doing going forwards with people's education. But staff do have a daily call with the Department of Education, and I'm sure that's something that they'll be bringing up.
Thank you for highlighting that, Guy. John?
Just to come back really on the getting the message out, I think there was a doom-laden prophecy earlier in the summer that hasn't transpired, and I think part of the media narrative is they're looking to justify that doom-laden prophecy. And from my perspective, it hasn't happened. I think it's gone much smoother than any of us anticipated. As far as talking to staff are concerned, there are high anxiety levels. And my role, I don't know whether Lynn will support this, is basically to reassure staff, look, everybody's doing everything they can. And if a colleague gets in touch with us, as a rule, if we leave it 24 hours, things have settled down again. So it's going very well. And I think the main thing is to avoid panic. What staff are concerned about is sometimes the parental responses. So they see parents mixing, they see them without face masks, and it's just another little added anxiety. I'm not sure what we can do with that, do about that, except get the message out consistently. I do have one slight question. And it's a fairly bespoke question, and it's regarding children in PMLD schools, kind of high needs schools. And there is some concern among staff about PPE, because a lot of these students are high maintenance. They do need a lot of personal care. And one or two were just concerned that sometimes they get some PPE, but then they have to go and ask the head teacher for additional bits. Are we confident that all the PPE to this admittedly small number of students is being made readily available and is funding available to provide it? That's a question. I can't hear anybody.
Sorry,
It was just about the high need students and PPE.
Yeah, I absolutely get that, and I think that but there's a number of ways that schools can access PPE. I think the risk assessment, there's several facets to the question that you've asked. So the risk assessments that schools have undertaken with their students should indicate what level of PPE they need to use with each of the individual students. And they should have a plan in place about how they source or access that level of PPE as they go along. We provided a very small amount of PPE for our schools at the very start when schools were going back. And we've also agreed that if schools are, need a PPE in an emergency, we will be able to provide that. But there are schools have got their own routes into applying for PPE. We would never see a school struggle. So just to be very clear about that, we would never let a school struggle with PPE. But there are it is an expectation that schools will source PPE where they know that they need it. Again, I'll just stress that if there's a challenge in relation to that, then we would be more than happy to discuss this with the school and provide emergency PPE should that be needed. Obviously within the realms of what we have available. We don't always have a significant amount of PPE available that might be needed in any case.
Lovely, thank you, Kath.
Thanks, Kath. Any more?
Chair, just one comment if I can.
Sorry, Scott.
Yes, Scott.
Sorry, Audrey. Just one quick one. So obviously we've covered all the fantastic work that the school leadership teams are doing and the teaching staff. What I would say is from a perspective of children with disadvantaged needs is the real welcome that I have for all the support staff who are working incredibly hard. Students are being fed. There was a lot of work put in even when schools weren't open about feeding students, especially free school meal students. A lot of the schools have gone over and beyond, and no school functions without the fantastic work of the support staff who have just the same anxieties and all the other things around this. And just to put on record my thanks to them as well as the teachers and everybody else. And I think, as indicated by the union representatives and others, teachers are feeling supported, school staff are feeling supported. Where there are issues, they're being picked up. And we've all got a role in highlighting those issues to make sure they're picked up quickly. So just a quick comment on that basis, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, Scott. There's maybe sometimes forgotten a lot more staff working in the background as well that need that level of thanks. Audrey, I'll come to you first.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dickinson beat me to it. I was just about to note exactly all of the support staff, because this isn't about teachers and head teachers and governors. We have a really broad set of staff across the schools. And just echoing what Kath has just said around the PPE, just last night, actually, we arranged an emergency PPE for 2 schools. So we also provided with them, when we do this routinely we do a twice weekly briefing. We give them really key information. It's not about just giving them lists of information and bombarding. It's picking that out at an appropriate time so that head teachers can see really specific information that supports them. We've provided them with a list and an update around PPE. We've given them really key suppliers who are ready. They're on the NCC procurement list. So there are some swift actions and support available. But just for John's perspective, to understand that we are providing emergency where that is required. And I think just coming back to the support staff, if I could, what was really key around, I think what Councillor Daly mentioned earlier in the IPPR report, to give the committee some assurance that we are dealing with COVID on a daily basis, but we are also very much thinking about how we plan everything else alongside, how we continue lots of the business as usual, which is really difficult, the business as usual. But for example, the Free Schools Meals team, we're looking at uniform and how we support people with uniform, families with uniform in really challenging circumstances. We're about 4 weeks off the end of the furlough scheme, and that could potentially have a greater economic impact for families moving forward. So there are a number of areas that we're picking up around, you know, potential families who may move into more care circumstances, who will have challenging financial circumstances. And there's a really cross-service approach within children's services, and we're continuing that work. So to provide some assurance, given some of our discussion this morning.
Thank you, Audrey. I think you just touched on something there with regards to information. It's all too easy to give an information overload, and it's just making sure that you're giving the right information to the right people at the right time. Russ, did you have something to say?
Yeah, just to reinforce Audrey and Scott's point about the whole staff thing. I know many of us are also school governors, and our role during this has become quite crucial as well, I think, often as a critical friend to the head and to the staff. And I think we should also pay tribute to the work school governors are doing at present. It's a hard time to be a governor.
Yeah. Okay. Are we all done with that? I think Liz has dropped off now, but I want to just say thanks to Liz and thanks to everyone for the input on that subject. I think it's very, very important. And as we mentioned previously, this is something which isn't just changing every week or every day. It's almost changing every minute at this present time, and something that we really need to focus on. So item 5, report of the scrutiny officer. Is there anything to pick up on there now, Chris?
Thanks, Chair. There's a couple of things being mentioned. So the Education Improvement Board that Councillor Daly and Kath mentioned, we've got a report on that coming in December. And the Education Challenge report is scheduled. We just need to sort of pin down a date on that and iron out what it'll cover. And we can have that come to the committee at some point, probably in the new year. Next month in November, we'll have a COVID recovery report, that's going to go to all scrutiny committees and obviously cover the certain areas. So hopefully that might help answer some questions that councillors have on the recovery of COVID. And we also have the SEND recovery plan coming in November as well. Okay. But as always, if councillors have anything that they want the committee to consider, they only have to ask me or yourself, Chair, and we'll then discuss it and take it to Chairman's group.
Yeah, by all means, thank you. Okay, I have no urgent business. So with that said, I thank you everyone for your attendance today, and I'll close the meeting and look forward to the next one in November. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Bye.